This question obviously follows on from the one earlier raised by Deputy Crowe in relation to Larium, and I think the choice, Minister, isn't malaria or a debilitating life or death through suicide. It's about listening to the best medical information that's out there. Now, we're joined in the gallery by Mark O'Sullivan, who served 18 years in the Defence Forces and is facing medical discharge in about 3 weeks' time. He served 3 times overseas and experienced very bad reactions as a result of Larium in Liberia. So I'll take up the points further.
Actually, I totally agree with you on this, right? This is about getting the best medical advice, and I agree with Deputy Crowe on it too. The reason why I'm a little defensive on it is that it's not an easy decision here. Because there are some problems with Larium, which there are for some people. I've used Larium and I didn't get any side effects, and I'm lucky. Other people have had side effects. But it's about balancing the health concerns of our troops that are going abroad into conflict zones that are malaria areas. And different strains of malaria require different drugs. Not all of our troops that go abroad are treated with Larium. And I have tried to be consistent on this, that the decisions here should be informed by the best medical advice in Ireland and abroad, which is why I've asked the working group on Larium to look at this again, to come back to me with a report before the end of the year. If there's updated information, if there are better alternatives to Larium now that we can use with a less percentage chance of negative side effects, if we can screen our troops more effectively before they go, to make sure that we reduce risk of the use of Larium. But all of those things are being considered. I wouldn't have any problem with saying, sorry, we're not using Larium anymore, if I felt that that was the right decision to take for medical reasons. But what I don't want to do is do that and expose Irish Defence Force personnel to potentially contracting malaria, which is a killer disease. So this is about, and I have made it very clear within the department that I want the working group to produce another report. I want them to look again at what's being said abroad and the medical advice that they can get here at home. And we'll do all of those things. And next year, we're going to be forced into making a decision anyway, because Larium mightn't be available here, which is fine. But we have to I cannot and will not send troops abroad into areas if I'm not satisfied that we are reducing their risk to the maximum possible extent to exposure to malaria using the best available drugs.
Thank you.
And there is no perfect drug for malaria, and anybody who says there is, well, I'd certainly like to hear about it if there is.
Thank you.
So this is about minimising risk and taking decisions on the back of that on the basis of good medical advice. And that is the only consideration that I have when I'm looking at the Larium issue.
Thank you.
So I think there's 2 problems with your answer, Minister. One is it seems to be taking an incredibly long time for the department to consider this matter, and there's no indication of any urgency in that at all. Nobody said that Larium was the only drug, but the attitude of the Irish Defence Forces has primarily been around that viewpoint. Back in 1992, the World Health Organization warned against the use of Larium specifically as a drug in terms of troops in Cambodia at that time. We're in 2015, and the more you delay, the more people like Mark are involved, are subjected to Larium and the potential side effects in that scenario. So, look, it's a fact that the Defence Select Committee in Britain is examining this in a very proactive way, that the Australian Senate Committee on Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade is launched an inquiry into the use of Larium on this. It's not good enough to say, oh, there's a working group and sure, hopefully that'll come back soon enough. And I will sure look at next year anyway, we won't be able to have this drug. There needs to be action taken on it now. I'm wondering if you would be available to maybe meet Mark to discuss that after these questions.
Deputy, I'm not saying ash or anything. I'm saying that the working group has looked at it and they came back with a recommendation that we should continue using Larium on balance. I've asked them to go and look at it again. And that work only started in September, and they will report before the end of the year. So this is not a blasé attitude like you're suggesting, Deputy. Quite the opposite, in fact. I will continue to ask for ongoing assessments of whether or not this is the right policy. Because, of course, people are asking questions, and people like Sean, who I'm delighted to see here today, you're very welcome, are obviously concerned about it. So I, as Minister for Defence, whose primary actually focus and responsibility is to make sure that our troops are safe themselves while they're trying to help other people's safety, are actually given the best possible medical treatment that we can give them.
Thank you.
Both at home when they come back, and obviously while they're in theatre. So, you know, as soon as I get an updated report that the working group can stand over, and there are experts on that group, then we'll act on that.
Thank you.
And you know, I can't be more upfront than that.
Yeah, but I don't know what the nature of the assessment is, Minister, that it would take 3 months to get that. There have been concerns raised about the, I suppose, ability or the professional status of those who've reviewed this. Why don't you consider the troops who are involved and some of the people who've had the direct experience and the negative reaction? Why could we not have, say, open hearings like they've had in Australia on this issue, where you could hear the testimony of those who've been so badly affected? I mean, people like Mark have had to themselves spend a fortune on private medical opinion, which is giving a very different interpretation of Larium than the one you've recounted based on the advice given by your people. It's not good enough, the delay in this. We've been discussing this for years here, and probably more people have been given Larium who are going to have a negative reaction during that time. That's probably tragically a fact. So given that it is the subject of an inquiry in Britain and in Australia and in other areas, I can't see any urgency coming from you in this. The facts have been presented to your department, and there needs to be a lot more.
Deputy, regardless of what I'm saying here, you wouldn't be satisfied. I mean, there is an ongoing review here. And you know, and that does take into account the experience of Irish troops. Of course it does. That's the whole point of it. In terms of the results around ensuring that our troops don't get malaria, and also the assessment of what has happened in terms of side effects for troops like Mark and others. So, you know, I will act, but I'll act on the basis of medical advice as opposed to what you're demanding. And by the way, there is very differing views in terms of the private sector, as you call it. When I used Larium, it was given to me by my local GP. There wasn't any public policy issue. So, you know, there are varying views here, and there are no easy solutions to dealing with protecting our troops from malaria. You know, I think that by putting an expert group together that isn't influenced by the politics of this issue, but actually wants to make a decision on the basis of the medical facts that are available both at home and abroad, is the right way to go, and that's what we're going to do.
Question number 6, the name is Deputy Sean Coveney.